What's up, everybody? No seasoning needed. Welcome back to the Ones Ready podcast. This is going to be myself and Trent in the team room. Parents, this one's for you. Before we start, though, go over to onesready.com and check out all the gear that you need to start your journey on this pipeline. I can tell you right now, if you go over to onesready.com and you check out all of the Attack Elite gear, you can hit one button and get every single piece of gear that you need. So do you have a high school senior that's graduating? Do you have somebody that thinks that they want to get off on this journey, so to speak? If you have somebody that is interested in these career fields and you want to set them up for the success that you think that they deserve as their parent, go over and buy one of the training, maybe get them a training rock, maybe get them some of those ropes that they're going to use, maybe get them the exact mask, snorkel, and fins that they're going to use in any one of these pipelines. And it's not just Air Force. It's Coast Guard, it's Marines, it's rescue swimmer, it's firefighter, it's police. We have everything that you need in order to train to get ready for whatever selection you're going through. So go check out. You can go to attackelite.com, use our code there. It's easiest just to go to onesready.com and order it directly off the site. No code needed. The discount is built directly in there, and we would really appreciate if you would do that, because it would help us help you, and that's why we're here, to be of service.
Yeah, your kids already have the most essential thing and the most important thing, especially if they're going Air Force. I don't know about the rest of them. They have you as parents. But the rest of the kit is going to be super important. And as parents, as you encourage them to work out and to do all these other things, one of the things that I like to drink while I'm working out, because it works, it's not just because they're their sponsor, is Hoist. Over at drinkhoist.com. You can put in the code. I think it's Ones Ready.
It's Ones Ready.
Yeah, but IV level hydration. It's one of the few things that I can actually drink during a workout, and staying hydrated and getting all those electrolytes and everything else without all the crap from the other companies is highly useful. And they also have it on base. So start drinking it early, just like everything else. And then once you transition into the military, you're still going to be able to get it, and it's still going to be doing just a good job hydrating you through these highly stressful events that we're about to talk about on this podcast.
Exactly. And you might think to yourself, well, I would love to drink Hoist, but is it approved by the DoD? It, as a matter of fact, is. That's why you can buy it on base. It's one of only 3 drinks that is actually approved. It's better than water for your rehydration. So go over to drinkhoist.com, use our code ONESREADY at checkout. I personally like the powders the best. They come in these little sticks that you can just shove into a bag or a pocket or whatever. Fruit punch, favorite flavor of all time. But they just came out with the Blaze Orange, the Blue Raspberry, and the Premix. It's basically Premix Gang versus like Powder Gang, and I'm Powder Gang for my entire life. So go ahead and invest in your candidate, whether it's through Hoist or through Attack Elite, because your candidate needs your support the entire time. That's what we talk about this entire podcast. Parents, you're doing a great job, but here are some cheat codes to do an even better job, so that hopefully you're the parent of a pararescueman, special reconnaissanceman, combat controller, or TAC-P operator. That'd be great. So cheers. Thanks, parents. This one's for you. I have it on good authority that everybody thinks we're clowns. So it's pretty on brand, really.
Can you imagine getting called into Jared's office and him dressing you down while you're looking down at him? Like, how would you not start giggling?
Do you think he stands on his desk so that he's like higher like a cat? So he's just like, yeah, what's up, dude?
Instead of like hitting you in the chest, he's like hitting your belly button as he like pokes into you.
What if mid dressing down? What if Peaches is dressing you down and you just ruffle his hair while he's doing it? Ah, you little scamp.
Come on, I'm sorry, buddy. Come on, I didn't mean to.
Come on, you just give him you just headlock him, give him a little nuggie. Like, oh.
You don't need to kick me out of the Air Force, buddy.
You're so adorable when you're here with the commander. Give me an Article 15. That's funny. Oh my goodness. So what do you want to talk about today?
How I've lost all military bearings since I retired.
That didn't happen when I was in. Joke's on you, my guy.
It was a joke.
Can't lose something you didn't have.
It is that time of year again, where folks are graduating high school. We're getting a lot more messages and DMs from folks, especially from parents, being like, hey, my kids are interested. My kids are working hard. Maybe not my first choice for my child, but they are interested in Air Force Special Warfare. What do I need to do to prepare them? And then what types of things should I be doing as they go through the pipeline? And what's the experience going to be like for my kid? You know, and what's the best way to make my kid successful throughout this process? So,
yeah. So parents, listen up. This one's for you. It's tough. I have 2 children that are in the decision age to go into the military or do college or do whatever. So I'm speaking from, at least some experience there of being a parent of somebody that is of the age in the time to actually go and get into the military. So there you go. I understand that it's got to be a wacky time, knowing what I put my parents through, knowing what Trent put his parents through, going through the pipeline and going to do this job. It's got to be tough. You have a lot of questions. we're going to try to walk you through the pipeline. We're going to set this one up. We're going to walk through the pipeline, right? From the very beginning, when your son or your daughter goes, hey, I think I want to try out this Air Force thing as my career. We're going to talk about some pitfalls, maybe give you some advice, maybe hopefully you avoid some of the mistakes that we've seen that we're making, that parents are making out there, and maybe give you a little bit more information so that you can make an informed choice kind of going forward.
Yeah. Actually, I heard about something the other day. I was talking to a family member, and they were talking about their kid wanting to join the Army because where they go to school or the people they hang out with are only Army folks. And like,
Mm-hmm.
how do they get information about like the greater, military experience and all the opportunities that are out there? And I think for me, that would be a good place to start. Is like if your kid comes home talking about the military in general or a specific branch, like maybe your kid, they're going to get excited about something because they know some older people or some vets that come from a specific branch, but it's probably going to be on the parents a fair bit to at least get that um, information gathering, started so you can really see all the opportunities that are out there, because there's more out there than just being an 11 Bravo. And much love to my infantry bros, but it's kind of like the default for a lot of people, and especially if your kids are going to school and their ROTC program is all Army or any of these other things. It can be easy to get wedged into one of those things without knowing the full picture.
Yeah. And you don't necessarily want to talk them out of anything, right? Because the intent that they're starting with, right? They're like, I want to be in the Army. The first thing you want to do is don't probably not go, you don't want to go into the Army. God, you don't want to do that at all, because it immediately sets up this adversarial thing. I think what would be helpful to you parents out there is to understand exactly why it is that we think the Air Force is a better choice as opposed to all these other things. People that are in JROTC, 13 to 18-year-old folks, they understand the surface level at very best. So when the Army recruiter comes to him and goes, hey, we're going to pay for your college, you're going to be able to see the world, we're going to get you into this job, it's 11 Bravo, it's going to be really, really fun, you're going to learn and see the world, and you're going to get to do all this stuff, and we got great educational benefits, and you're part of the world's greatest Army, it's going to be great. It's a great pitch. It's a great pitch to a 15-year-old. It's very hard for a parent to go, listen, I think the Air Force is a better choice. Even if they don't have the same job, I think the Air Force is a better choice. It's hard to do that without hearing it from us. So at the very beginning of this, Trent, when the candidate comes to their parents and they say, I want to go into the military, what cheat codes would you give to the parents to get them to have a conversation about the Air Force? What things would you highlight that are different than the Army, than the Marines, Space Force, Coast Guard, all these other agencies that you could go to? What would you start the conversation with?
First of all, if my kid comes to me and says that they want to join the Army or become a Navy SEAL, like they're getting locked in the closet until they. I'm just kidding.
Hey, Jared, cut this next part out. Okay, it's let's see, it's 5:15. I just marked it. This is a funny joke that's never going to see the light of day. Listen, Trent, if they're coming to you telling them they want to be in the Marines, they were already in the closet. You don't need to put them back in. They're coming out of the closet by telling you that they want to be a Marine. I'm going to mark this right here. It's 5:15 to 5:35.
Like,
anyway, moving on.
If you listen to the podcast, there's a little bit of humor here, and then a little, inter-service rivalry stuff that comes out. I think it's just educational, right? You gotta show them the stuff. Like as a kid, if my parents are coming to me and being like, "Hey, have you looked at the Air Force?" It's gonna be like, "Why? Why do I want to look at the Air Force, Mom and Dad?" But like the Air Force doesn't have infantry. The Air Force doesn't have, Marine Force Recon. The Air Force doesn't have all of these other things. When in reality, with a little bit of research, you can show them that not only is your quality of life going to be better across the board, you're not going to get stuck on a ship. You're not going to be doing whatever Army people do. I don't know. They're always dirty, which is fine. I mean, much love to my Army guys. And if you want to join the Army, that's good on you.
More power to you. We've had, how many Army guys have we had on here? A million.
Yeah, and I think most of them have been like, I should have joined the Air Force. I wanted to, but
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's another thing. Like, show them the podcast where there's Army guys on here being like, I should have joined the Air Force. But you're going to have to educate them. You're going to have to walk the dog on it. It's not just going to be like, hey, I heard that the Army really sucks. They're like, yeah, no kidding, Mom and Dad. If they're coming to you saying like, I want to join the Army, they're looking for that challenge. That is the space in their soul or whatever that they're trying to fill up. And the Army guys and the Marines have a really good pitch about that, right? It's like, I almost got sucked into the Marines, and so did Aaron, because they promised to provide that challenge for us and all these opportunities, which is not a lie. It's awesome, but you can still get that, and you can still stay at better hotels. and you can be treated like a human being.
And you can still get more money, and you could like all of these things. That's why when we start having these conversations, parents, when your daughter comes to you and they say almost 95% of the time, and I made that number up, but it's almost every single time somebody, especially when I'm having conversations with candidates, they come to me and they're like, I want to be a Ranger. You're like, well, why? Why do you want to be in the Army? And they're like, well, I don't necessarily want to be in the Army. I just want to be a Ranger. I want to do the things that a Ranger does. That's your end. That's the point for you to listen to your candidate and go, oh, wait a second. You want a challenge. You want to do something physically hard. You want to work somewhere that has professionals that have high standards. We have a culture of performance. They're high performing teams. You want to make an impact. Those are all the things that I hear when somebody tells me they want to be an Army Ranger, because that's how the Ranger Regiment does their business. They have high standards. They will not let you slip on those standards. The things that they do are important and they're tough. Now, if you never think about the Air Force in those terms, like being a PJ is all of those things and more. And then I'm going to be able to put all this other stuff on top of it, right? The cool schools, the extra pays, the better assignments, the ability to work with those teams that you want to work with without having to be in the Army. It's a hard thing because, again, I want to be cynical. I want to be like, hey, you know what would be the coolest part about being a Ranger? If being a Ranger was in the Air Force, because it sucks to be in the Army. Like, it'd be really cool about the SEALs is if the SEALs were in the Air Force and they weren't in the Navy, because I don't like being on boats. I don't want to have to do that stuff. It's hard to explain to somebody that all of these things that they're looking for exist somewhere else. It's just they're not aware of it, which is, to be honest with you, why we started the podcast, because people don't know. It's funny to have inter-service rivalry. It's funny to say, Marines eat crayons and Army people are always in the field and the Navy doesn't have a gag reflex, whatever. I don't know what's exciting. That's probably, oh man, let me mark that one too.
This just became a members only podcast.
It did. Yeah. Real quick. Just beep it all out, Peach. It's just a couple of clown horns. Listen, whatever it is that you're seeking, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. My dad did this perfectly. I said the exact same thing that Trent just said. I said, hey, I want to go fight. It's post 9/11, right? Like, no kidding, September 12th. I want to go fight. I want to leave right away. I want to challenge, and I want to be able to make an impact on the battlefield. That's what I want to do. I don't want, I want a line job. I want to go fight. And my dad was like, hey man, all of those things that you're talking about, they exist in a place that you're going to be able to do all of those things to the 10th degree. You're going to be able to make an impact as one person. You're going to be able to make an impact as a single small team. You're going to be able to do things that nobody else can do because it's challenging, because they have high standards. You're not going to get in unless you work and drive and dedicate your life to it. It just happens to be in the Air Force. My dad did a great job, so kudos to him, but he did it in such a way that I didn't think he was poo-pooing. He's like, listen, the Marines are awesome. If you want to go be a rifleman, I know a bunch of them, and you'll go fight right away. You'll find yourself in Fallujah pretty much right away. You'll find yourself in, some of these other far-flung places in the world. But you could still get all of those things that you desire and be treated better for it. So why not do that? Why not be treated better your entire life? Because the gunfights are 0.1% of your career. The cool schools, all that other stuff is 0.5% of your career. 1% of your career is going to be spent doing the movie version of the job that you're getting into. The other 99% is you living on a base, using base facilities, getting paid whatever the service is. Wants you to get paid. Your child care is dependent upon where it is that you live and what base you're on and what service it is, where you can get stationed, everything down to how you sleep. We make a joke about it, but usually in the Air Force, you usually get your own room and it's usually a pretty nice bed. And if you have to share a hotel room, which happens few and far between, you still get your own bed. We make, granted, there are times where we go out to the field and we sleep in tents.
We want to.
Yeah. Right. Granted, there are times, especially for us, when we go out, we do hard things. You're going to sleep in tent. You're going to go 2 weeks without showering. You're going to be in field problems where you don't get to use any of these creature comforts. But then you come home to your really nice base and you fall asleep on your bundles of cash that you stick in your stinking pillow, because you're going to get extra pays, right? You don't get that stuff everywhere else. And it's hard to explain to people that don't have the ability to compare the two. So when that candidate comes to you and they say, I want to do this job, just take a breath and think, why do you want to do this job? Or even better, ask, why do you want to do that job? What, you haven't always wanted to be a Ranger. This is kind of a new thing that you want to get in the military. You want to do a combat job. Why? And then when they start in, that's your in. that you're going to go, hey, you want to do all this cool stuff? I got a job that can do all this cool stuff, but you'll also get taken care of better if you decide to do it for the Air Force.
Right. And I think you brought up a really good thing too about how we work with everybody. Like if your kid is like, hey, I can't decide between Rangers, Green Berets, SEALs, and the Marines, you know, do you know who gets to play with all of those guys? Who gets the entire gamut of experiences? Nobody. Like the Marines don't do what the Rangers do. The Rangers don't do what the SEALs do. Blah 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 blah. Do you know who gets to play with everybody? We do. Like
Yeah.
I've said it before. Like I feel like I was a special operations tourist, you know, during my career, because like there's another team, you go do another thing with this group of guys, and then you come back and you go do it with this group of guys. And so like if your kid is like, I want that experience, there's no greater breadth of experience that you can experience in the military than to be in the Air Force Special Warfare community.
Yeah, and that's great. And where so there's breadth and depth, right? So depth is how much you do a specific thing. You know, for Navy SEALs, yeah, their depth of maritime operation is great, but like Trent was saying, their breadth is zero. Again, I've made this joke on the podcast before, but there's never been a time as a pararescue team leader, flight chief, op soup, whatever else, there's never been a single time in my life where I put together a request for forces or an RFF because I needed one PJ, or I needed one Ranger, I needed one SEAL, I needed one MARSOC Marine. That has never happened. I have approved countless RFFs for my people to go work with these other teams because that's how this works. You're going to get to touch those different organizations at different parts of your career. When you work with ST, you're going to work with the Army. You're going to follow Army regs. You're going to live and breathe with the Army. You're going to work with those teams. When you're over on the ACC side of the house, you're going to work with a bunch of international partners, and you're going to work with a bunch of Air Force cats and dogs. But there's still the opportunity to go out and work with the Navy. You know, hey, they've got, you know, this random Coast Guard team just happens to be 2 minutes down the road from Joint Base Lewis McChord, right? You can go and work with the Coasties and do rescue swimmer stuff. Coasties don't often come with us to work land operations because that's not inside their purview. Right. It is inside of our purview, though. So you're going to have those opportunities to touch those organizations that you might not. And that doesn't even count the tier one element to it. That doesn't even count being able to go and opening that aperture up even more. Okay. When you go to tier one in the Army and the Navy, it's even more inclusive, right? Like it's narrowing down a smaller and a smaller pool. We have a robust selection and assessment program for our tier one unit, but our tier one unit is almost specifically and exclusively there to support those other tier one units and then go off on their other mission sets, which they have as well. So the menu of what you're going to have is way bigger in those things. However, the desire to do them almost always sounds the same. You know, I want to be a Ranger. Okay, you don't want to be a Ranger. You want to be part of a high performing team that trains hard, that has standards, that does kinetic things. That's what you want, right? We have that too. You just have to be able to communicate it to them.
Well, and also remember, if you're going to do 4 years, and if you find another job that you want to do in the military, it's going to be easier to front load with the hardest thing. The hardest organization to get into from the ground up is probably ours. Like it's difficult to learn about it. It's difficult to get in. It's difficult to get through the assessment and selection and all this other thing. If you do 4 years and you start working with the SEALs and you're like, man, I really want to be a Navy SEAL, which I don't think is really ever happened in the history of our community.
I'm trying to think of this guy. I want to put his name out there. I don't think he made it. We had a PJ that went over to Buds and didn't make it. I think he ended up washing out after Hell Week or something. I always laugh. I won't put his name out there. He's a good dude, but he's also very, very aggressive.
But that's you know, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. But like coming over from those services into ours, you know, we're small. We're really small, which is one of the things that we really love about our community. There's only so many retraining slots that we're going to have, and those are difficult to get into. And the amount of paperwork at that point is pretty obscene. But if I wanted to get out halfway through my career and go join the Army on a 18 X-ray contract when that was a thing, it wouldn't have been difficult. Like it's not hard to do.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. It's the toughest to get in. And I mean, everybody knows the hardest things are oftentimes the ones that are most worth doing, if that makes sense. So Trent, to move it on down to this, you know, down this chronological road. So the candidate comes to the parents and they're sure that they've made a good decision and they want to go into Air Force Special Warfare and they want to go into the SWOV program. How can the parents best support their candidate at the beginning of the process?
And I mean, you got to be supportive, and then also you need to be able to look at your kid critically to set them up for success. And this, I mean, most parents I think have a pretty a pretty good amount of experience with this. It's like, it's difficult, right? Like if you're watching your kid play baseball, you want to believe that your kid is the best baseball player on that team, but you know that maybe they're not. And so this is the time as a parent, once again, to look at them and maybe, reach out to Kevin Edgerton at 18 Alpha Fitness or anything else that you want to do. And when your kid is knocking out push-ups, be like, man, I don't think those are good enough. Like, are you breaking 90 on the way down and are you locking out at the top? Like you need to be the first cadre. Parents need to be the first cadre if you want your kid to be successful, not only physically, but also psychologically as well.
Yeah. And it comes with accountability. You know how you can help your child out really well? You can walk down when that bum is sleeping and you know they should be up training. You know they should be out working out. You know that they're skipping a workout. When you see them come home with fast food for the third time in a week, that's your job as a parent. If you really want to support them by giving them something they can use and be a parent. Supporting is not enabling. You telling them, oh, you're going to do great. Everything's going to be fine. I'm sure you'll get picked up. You're working so hard. That's enabling. That's allowing their bad habits to present themselves and allowing failure to creep into the scenario. Now, as opposed to you walking downstairs and going, hey, you're supposed to be training. What are you doing here at the house? Throw down the you don't need to be on the sticks right now. Turn the Xbox off. You should be doing some mobility. You should be studying. You should be listening to the Ones Ready podcast. They're really smart. Make sure to like and subscribe. I really like those guys. Maybe think about becoming a member. But you can help them through accountability as well. If they feel like they're part of a team going forward in this process, everybody's going to feel better about it. I know that you're probably going to have your misgivings about your son or daughter going into a combat career field where we do dangerous things. People die. It's unfortunate. We know them all. Couple of names on those bracelets, on my display right there. People that I personally work with, known that were friends of mine that unfortunately died. I get it. It's scary. But the only way that you get through those things is as a team. And the team has to start at home. Recruitment starts at home. The team mindset starts at home. Even if you don't approve. And that's a tough one too. Trent, what do you, let's say that there's a parent out there, their son or daughter comes to him and says, hey, I want to try this Air Force Special Warfare thing. And the parents are completely against it. How do you think that they should react? Because there's going to be a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them that are scared or they don't like the world, socioeconomic, geopolitical, whatever that's going on at the moment. And they're just not for it. How can they voice those concerns, but at the same time, not crush somebody's dream doing it?
I mean, you gotta be honest, right? Like, and these are the reasons, but you have to be honest with yourself first as a parent. It always comes back to that. Like, you have to think about why you are really worried about this. Are all the things that you see on the news the real reason, or is that an excuse because you're worried about your kid? And trust me, I'm empathetic,
Right.
like to your plight right there. It'd be a terrifying thing. But figure out if you're just scared that you're going to lose your kid, which, hey, you're going to lose your kid eventually anyway. They're going to grow up.
Right.
I don't know if this is news to anybody. Is this news to anybody? Your kid's going to grow up and go away.
I don't think so. Yeah.
And if they don't, that's a whole nother ball.
I was going to say, in today's life, maybe it is much less common that people. Yeah. I mean, I got like this. This is a joke, but it's a serious thing. When I was 18, my parents got me luggage. Like that was my 18th birthday present. Like, hey, time to go make your own, buddy. Get out.
Awesome gift. I wish my parents would have got me luggage. That's nice.
That's tight. I think I probably hawked it for something. I don't know. I don't know what I was doing at the time.
Beer money.
It sounds about right. Now I was bouncing for beer money. I can't imagine being in your scenario. Like I understand intimately what it means when someone says they're going to try these things, both from the fear of failure and they might not make it, all the way through the other end of it, which is they make it and it costs them their life, right? Like that's what we're talking about, trying to not be hyperbolic. And I understand that for your child or for your children, that's a tough thing to swallow, but they need you more now than they ever did to make this hard conversation, because your words still carry weight with them. When you're getting ready to leave for basic, what were some things, Trent, let's pretend you're a candidate, what would be most helpful for you to hear from your parents on your way out the door of basic training?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I just don't have feelings or whatever, but like, I just need to know that my parents have standards for me, and it's gonna become real clear real quick for these folks when they get to basic training, and it's like, you put that last name on your chest and maybe start talking about that a little bit, like, hey, you're going out there to rep the family. We're gonna be here and we're gonna love you no matter what, but never forget that you are a representative. You're representing your country and your family as you go out there, so you need to do your best no matter what, and don't forget about it.
It's the only thing that's yours that goes on the uniform. Everything else is the Air Force's. Your rank, your qualifications, your accoutrement that you're going to wear, whatever silly hat, whether it be multiple camouflage, whether it be multicam or a colored hat of some sort. The only thing that's yours on that uniform is your last name. And that's great input, man. Like you're there. It's the only part of you that the Air Force will allow you to display proudly is your name. That's it. They're going to tell you everything else about you. You can't cut your hair that way. Can't color your nails that way. Can't wear those clothes in that manner. But no matter what, every single one of those uniforms, it's got your name on it, your last name. And it's important for you to remember that because that'll help you in those times when there's nothing else. Because there's going to be times when you were wearing a uniform that is filthy with blood and guts and crap and urine, most of it yours, sometimes someone else's. And the only thing that you're going to recognize about yourself is going to be that last name when you look down. And that's important. It has a weight to it. For me, and I'm more of a sensei than you would expect. For me, my dad looked at me. I remember distinctly. It's the same place that his recruiter picked him up. It was right down the street. There's a in Barberton, Ohio. There is a couple different centers of gravity, but one of them is the statue of the Indian. So Ohio has a huge Native American indigenous population that went before, like all the snake mounds and all that stuff, the Indian burial stuff. So a lot of that stuff is in Ohio and Pennsylvania. Short story, that the statue of the Tuscarawas Indian tribe, there's a chief that they memorialized by a statue. It's literally at the bottom of my street. That is where I sat with my dad waiting for my recruiter to pick me up on that morning. And my dad just looked at me and was like, hey, man, I'm going to tell you the same thing my dad did. There ain't nothing back here for you. Nothing that you're going to do at basic training is going to affect us positively or negatively. It doesn't matter who gets sick. It doesn't matter if we lose the house. You quitting basic training, you quitting the pipeline and coming home does nothing. So don't even think about it. We got it back here. You got to go do this thing on your own. Those words, man, there was a bunch of times where, and I saw it on the other end too. I saw it on the other end where somebody was like, my mom got sick and, she was in financial trouble and things at home are blowing up and I got to quit. I got to go take care of. That has never worked out well. There's never been one time where somebody was like, you know what? I quit. I had more time to talk to my mom on the phone now. I couldn't get approved for leave anyway. And it turns out she's okay. She was just having a bad day and I quit because my mom was having a bad day. To hear that from my dad on the way out the door, to be like, hey, ain't nothing you're going to do there affect us here. You got to go be proud of your name. You got to go put out. I got it back here. You need to go do this thing. That's pretty good for me. Like that's what I needed to hear at the time. And I think that was a good thing for parents. If you just make them understand, hey, you got work to do. We're going to do work back here too. Again, the more that you can make this into a team, the more that you're going to succeed, right? It's the old, I think it's an African proverb. I think I've said it's a Norwegian proverb before. It's because I'm stupid, but if you want to go fast, you go by yourself. If you want to go far, you bring friends with you. And that's the only way to go in these pipelines is you got to do it as a team before they go off to basic training. And in basic training, that's
important. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you burden them with expectations, not with, your problems as a parent.
Right.
So you might just be venting and you might have that type of relationship with your kid when they're at home where y'all just, are open and talk about things and all that other stuff. Man, you got to cut a whole bunch of that out once they're gone because you should burden them with the expectation of the family. But also there's a whole bunch of other burdens and expectations that's going to be levied upon these folks as soon as they join basic training, and especially after they get out of basic training. And so just be real careful about, how much you're sharing, how you're sharing it, and recognize how that's going to affect your kid or your candidate or whatever, your airman.
Because what they're going through, if you don't have any experience with the military, and I love it when parents that don't have any experience reach out to us. Those are my favorite conversations to have. So shout out to everybody that's ever DM'd us to ask us these questions. We love having it. We're not so different. You and I, we're probably about the same age, to be quite honest with you. So there you go. What your candidate's going to be going through is they're going to have to get rid of all parts of themselves and be built back up in the image that the Air Force desires. That in and of itself, like we poo-poo basic training, right? Because it's not as long as, say, the Marine Corps. It's not as physically intensive as the Armies. You have to do a lot less swabbing of decks, I guess. I don't know what they do at Great Lakes for the Navy. I am completely blind to the Navy's recruitment process. Do you just like ride around in a boat? I don't know. Anyway, what it's stressful. Okay. I get it. It's the easiest. I get, okay, the Air Force is only 8 weeks long and it's not as physically demanding or whatever. Got it. It's still the most stressful thing that they've probably ever been through. I mean, just imagine, you have to go and learn a new job you just got hired on in a new place, but in 8 weeks, they're expecting you to be a manager. And oh, by the way, the way that they're going to teach you how to do your job is through yelling at you and physical exercise.
Yep.
Put yourself in that situation. Even if it wasn't that long, even if it wasn't that difficult, it would still be stressful. And that's what they're dealing with every day, right? Along with, there's distress. There's stress that makes me feel bad. And then there's eustress, EUSTRESS. That's actually good stress, and that's a good thing that's moving you forward, but it's still stress. Your body is still dealing with stress and a stress zone or a stress tolerance. They're making new friends. They're having interpersonal interactions, which are good and bad. They're having interaction with people that outrank them for the first time ever. And there's a certain syntax and way that you speak to people, and there's certain words you can and can't use. And it's this whole thing, right? It is a firestorm of them not understanding what's going on or how they're going to do it. And it opens up their brain to a whole list of other problems, right? Oh man, I had a bad day at basic training today. How am I going to make it through one day of the combat controller pipeline? This is basic. Yeah. This is supposed to be easy. And today was a hard day and I failed. How am I going to be in the combat control pipeline? Their one call for the week might be at the end of one of those days. And if you are not on your game, you could seriously impact their mental health and how they're doing. And you just have to think about, even if you haven't been in the military, put yourself in that position and think about, how would I deal with this thing? Living in an open bay with 60 people, getting yelled at, getting woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go work out and fold my clothes and learn rank structure and learn how to talk to people. And I have 2 minutes to get a shower and shave my face and get outside. And, we fail all the time and I can't march and all these other things. You can go through a million things. And granted, I don't think Air Force basic training is all that hard. I don't think it's all that difficult, but it is stressful. And that can impact your relationship with your candidate, and it can impact how your candidate views you. Because what you don't want, I'll tell you what, you call home, the worst thing to hear, I would imagine, again, my parents were pretty good about this. You call home and you say, hey, I had this pretty hard day. And the person on the other end of the phone goes, I don't know, that doesn't sound that hard. I mean, you wanted this, you signed up for it, right? Like, what's so hard about that? That doesn't sound tough. You got yelled at a couple times. You knew it was going to happen, right? That's tough.
My dad did give me those expectations because he was in the Air Force. And he was like, basic training. Like, they didn't show up to my graduation because graduating basic training is not anything difficult.
Yeah, my parents didn't show up when I graduated second grade either. Same reasoning.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like, oh, we have a 5th grade moving up ceremony into whatever. It's like, no. Like, you are more than capable of doing this. Like, why would I show up to congratulate you on something that literally everybody else, like, only millions of people have done before you? Like, great job. So some of those expectations were there. As you talk about basic, it is kind of funny. You're also learning that the people that come from different parts of the country are very, very different than you. And you might think that you're a well-cultured person,
right?
And you're on the internet and you know what people are like. You're gonna learn some stuff, and you're gonna get sick and all these other things. But as parents, it's so important that you're supportive. But I'm reminded of when Lance Belbredick was on here, he called his dad after, like, he first got to the pipeline. And things were rough for him in the beginning. It was a crap show. He was a cross trainee, and nothing was done right. All the paperwork was wrong. The Saudi pipeline was brand new.
He was the first one. That was an awesome episode. I'll link it here. So I'm gonna mark this bad boy. But I'll link to that episode. Lance is great.
But he calls his dad, who's a Marine Corps officer, I'm pretty sure. And his dad goes, yeah. Like, his dad wasn't like, oh man, like, stop being such a little baby about it. He was like, dude, that sounds tough, but sounds like you got 2 choices. And I think you're only going to be happy in the long term with one of those choices.
Yep.
Like, your job is to be the adult, and just be like, yeah, like, it sucks. Got it.
Yep. So now we're in the meat and potatoes, right? Trying to go chronologically, trying to weave this little thread all the way through the episode so you can pay attention. So now they're going to graduate BMT on a Friday, and they're going to show up over to the training complex on Monday. They typically try to get them in a little bit earlier, right? They try to get them in the Friday before the shenanigans start. There's always going to be changes. I'm not even going to talk about where they're going to report in or what course they're going to get first, because a lot of that stuff is changing. From the second that they get out of basic training and they start into this journey of the pipeline, whether it be at the Special Warfare Candidate course, assessment, selection, whatever this turns out to be in the future, because it will change. Everything changes. It always does. This is the time for you to buckle down. This is the time for you to get your mind right. If there's ever a time, they don't need a ton of support in BMT. They just need you to be there, right? Just being there and just being present, answer the phone call, respond to the text, mirror their energy, help them talk through hard stuff. That's really all you got to do. When you hit that complex, when you hit, I believe it's 5590 is the building number. When you get over there to SWIC, when you get over there to sign in to your new life, parents, buckle up, because this is when you're going to need to talk about it. You're going to experience the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. You're going to be excited about an upcoming week of training that the candidate thinks is going to be easy. You're going to be terrified about the week of training coming up that the candidate thinks is going to be hard. You're going to go for long periods without talking to them. Granted, their weekends and their nights are typically free. I can take that away at any time. As an instructor, that free time goes away right away, and so does the phone. So there may be long periods that you're going to have to be like, okay, no news is good news. If nothing is ringing my phone, well, then everybody is probably okay, and nobody needs me right now. And this is the time to kind of like lean in. Maybe one more time a day, an extra text message. Hey, man, you're crushing it. I hope you had a good day. Even if you didn't, F it. Let's drive on. We're still here. This day down, next day down. Every day, every event, every moment, they just need your support. And it needs to be unwavering support. And sometimes that support can be a little bit heavy-handed and a little bit pointed. This is where one of the tools that my dad used, there were definitely times where I called my dad during the pipeline, or I called friends, and I was just like, man, I don't fucking know. They were like, hey, you owe it. You owe it to a lot of people. You said you were going to do this. You owe it to a lot of people that got you there. And, the basic training instructors, everybody that poured their experience and time and energy into you, you owe it to them to make it one more day. And parents, you're going to have to get your game face on, because it's time to go for it. Assessment selection and pre-dive, this is not the time to be a little bit wishy-washy or to let your candidate call you and go, I don't know if this is for me. This is not the time to go, oh, maybe you're right. Maybe it isn't for you. Maybe, other jobs are there. Like, this is going to be okay. There may be a time and place for that. This ain't it.
Yeah. Well, and your kids, right? So like we could give all the advice in the world, but like also there's like, hey, maybe don't bother them so much, like, hey, and I'm probably speaking mostly to moms, but you might not need to speak to your kid every single day. Set up a schedule for once or twice a week where you get to like actually sit down and chit chat with them, because if they have to talk to you every single night, even if it's positive, that could really be stressful as well. Like, they don't have that much time. They don't have a ton of time. So maybe, Sunday midday is phone call time with little Jimmy, because it gives him something to look forward to. It allows him to like lay some stuff out and get some stuff off his chest before Monday. And Monday is not always a fun day. And that way he's not knowing, like, you're not going to take up 5 minutes of his time every evening. Like, he doesn't have to like worry about one more thing that he has to do on the insane list of tasks that he has, especially for his skill level. Like, he doesn't know how to manage all these things already as it is. So like, this is where you start working that deployment schedule, like, how many times do you call home every week? Like, how much conversation is enough conversation? Like, how many updates do you need? And figure it out. Because if you're texting him every day and you've got to call every night, otherwise, like, maybe that's the straw that broke the camel's back, is they just don't have enough time in the day to get all of these things done. Like, maybe they need 5 more minutes of sleep to be successful tomorrow.
And just a quick explainer here, like, it's a 24-hour job. Like, again, you're going to have a little bit of freedom nights and weekends. That doesn't mean that you're not training. And it also doesn't mean that the expectation is you're not doing stuff. And this is what Trent's alluding to here, but you essentially have homework. In every single pipeline, the instructors will give you homework. You get done with a day of training and you wouldn't think about it, but the instructors will look at you and go, all right, cool. Tomorrow when you guys come in, you're going to tell me everything about retired Command Chief Master Sergeant Will Markham. Tell me why he's important to the combat control career field. They're going to have to go and study and get stuff together. And sometimes they'll make the team present as a team. Like, they'll make you do things that take up your time on purpose. Even when they're not, no one is good at selection. Selection is a war of attrition. You are just good enough to not fail. That is what you need to be. No one smokes selection. No one in the history of the world, maybe Mike Maltz. Maybe Mike Maltz smoked in Doc because he was notorious for being a beast. Maybe there is somebody out there that smoked A&S and they just crushed it. It was a walk-off home run. I haven't met him. I met Mike Maltz one time. I don't know. Maybe he was the guy and I just don't know it. The reason that we say that, though, is to make sure that you're caged. They can't talk to you every night. They're studying. They're getting better. Do you know how many times I've spent in parking lots, formed up with my friends, just going over what words we're going to say? A lot. Okay. I was a grown up. I had kids. Okay. I had children, and I was standing in a parking lot at 7:30 at night because we couldn't come up with a funny team saying at dive school. And if we couldn't all say it together as a joke, we were going to get smoked the next day. Fun story about that. We came up with the dumbest one. We thought it was hilarious. So when you're getting ready for DSPIs, when you go to dive school, you have to get your equipment checked, and the instructors come out. They make a big show of it. It's part of the culture. Like, they're inside a building, and then they walk out, and everybody's lined up with their dive gear on in the sweltering heat, and you're sweating. And the dive soup is like, hey, is your team ready for DSPI, which is dive supervisor personnel inspection? And the team is supposed to sound off and say something, and this is so embarrassing. A good friend of mine, Steve, was the crow on the team. He was a legend. He's a great guy, Steve Goodman. What's up, sir? He came up with this thing, like, he's the one that had to report, right? And the instructors came out and be like, hey, Major Goodman, is your team ready for inspection? And he'd go, hey, dive soup, here I am. And the rest of the team would go, rock you like a hurricane. We practiced that for hours. The look of disgust on the instructor's face when we did this, it was like, those moments in your life where there's that deafening silence and you're like, oh no,
they're gonna think this is so funny, guys. They're gonna think this is so funny.
It's old school. Like, this guy loved like 80s music, so we thought there was a connection there where we could be like, rock you like a hurricane. There was this dead silence, and then the guy was just like, drop. I saw you guys out here for hours. Like, this is the bullshit you came up with. This is disgusting. And literally every second of that time, I was just like, oh, this sucks. This is not good.
It's usually a joke, but you guys really are the dumbest team we've ever had. You really.
I loved hearing that from instructors. You know how many times I heard that during my pipeline? More than once. If I had a nickel for every time an instructor told me I was on the worst team, I'd have like 4 nickels, but it'd still be weird that it happened 4 separate times.
But for parents too, like as a cone, as a candidate, as a student, you're letting people down all the time, right? Like, you're a disappointment a lot. So like, if little Jimmy misses a phone call or doesn't return your text right away, what you don't say is, hey, how come you didn't? Don't get in your feelings. It's not the time to get in your feelings about it.
Like, he's already a piece of crap that day.
Yeah, he's already ruined everything. His teammates got smoked today because it was his day to mess up.
Oh, man.
Like, it's enough. So like, if they miss that phone call, don't get all butthurt about it, and don't, like, the only stress that they should feel from you is if they don't make it, or if they quit. Really, if they quit, you'll be disappointed.
That's
everything else is full support and scheduled out. Otherwise, because it's already rough.
I think I wanted to tell a story about this time that I was an a-hole and I cost my team an entire day, but I won't. I'll save it for another time because we're talking to the parents. All right. So we're getting through it, right? Let's hope that they get selected, right? We're going to talk about the best possible scenario first. They get selected. They make it through. They don't quit. They don't fail. They don't have an inability to meet standards. They don't do anything stupid on the weekends. They get selected. This is going to be bittersweet for you. I'm just going to tell you right now, because this is where stuff is going to start getting super real. Okay. Number one, the evaluation isn't over. Number one, the only thing that they've done is they've bought a ticket to get evaluated 2 times, 3 times a day for the rest of their life, all the time. Right. So that's number one. So there's still a long road to go. So you can't be too happy. You can't be like, oh, this is it. Assessment and selection isn't the point. Getting to your first team is the point. That's the goal. Doing the job is the goal. The goal is not to do the pipeline. Anybody can do the pipeline. I can teach any 18-year-old to make it through the pipeline. That's not the point. Okay. You can't teach any 18-year-old how to be good inside the job. That's almost completely on them with the help of a lot of other people. Okay. A lot of other people are going to pour their experience and time and knowledge and effort into the candidate, and then hopefully the candidate takes all of those things and applies them and becomes a good operator. That's the goal, right? So when you get to assessment selection, people hyper focus on it because we talk about it 90% of the time, right? You think that that's the end of it. That's the biggest thing you can do. Nope. You're going to hit assessment selection, and then you're going to spend a weekend and you're going to go right back to dive. So parents, you know what I'd like to hear as a candidate here? You did a good job. This is a dream that's starting to be realized. Take a day. Take tonight. Have some age-appropriate fun. Do not get yourself in any trouble. Drink some water, and then get up tomorrow and get right back at it, because you got 2 more days, and now we're going to start another hard day of training. That would be great input from a parent. on an assessment selection positive day.
Yeah. I mean, your reputation has just started. You proved that you can do it. So hey, you've already set expectations for yourself. Like these aren't even this is you growing up. Your expectation, you got selected. Expectation is you go crush. So call me when you can. And I want to hear your funny stories. And one of the other things
I
thought
don't
about,
think they're funny at all. Team jokes are never funny to anybody else.
They're gonna tell you some stupid stories, probably. Your candidates will, and just pretend,
just laugh,
just pretend along,
just pretend like you have any clue. So then we got the area call to attention, but the instructor didn't see the student. He was like, ugh, and then the instructor was like, drop, and then we were all like, so proud, and then he laughed and he liked us, and Sergeant Segmiller said that we were the best team that day.
He never said that.
That's not funny, and no, he didn't say that.
but also in that same vein, like, so as I go through the rest of this process, there's going to be a couple things that happen. A, you're going to want to ask a ton of questions, and B, there is going to be the winter break, the Christmas break, where they're going to come home, and these are two traps that people are going to fall into. I get that you want to know everything about everything, and especially if you weren't in the military, you're like, what does that mean? What does this mean? When can you come home? Like, what's your mailing address? All these other things. Like, you just need to be patient with your student. They're going to come to a place at some point in their pipeline, probably some point in pre-dive. It happens for a lot of folks, maybe a little bit later, maybe after they get through dive school, if that's like the big gate for them, where they're going to normalize, right? And they're going to have time to answer your questions. They're going to have their stress tolerance is so high at that point that like it won't matter. They can spend time with you on the phone and answer a lot of these questions. But in the beginning, it's just another thing. It's don't ask a jabillion questions and make them explain it, because honestly, it doesn't really matter. And today, like if they have their phone, you can email them and all these other things. Like you don't need to ask a billion questions. You can come ask us the questions.
I was
and we'll
going to
answer for
say, ask us. If you hear something and the student doesn't feel comfortable like talking about it, granted, there are going to be some things that truly for operational security or personal security reasons, info security reasons, they're not going to be able to tell you, okay, because their instructors are very, very tight and rigid for what it is, can and can't get out. We know those rules like the back of our hand. You got a question about something, hit us up. We're happy to explain it. We're not going to tell you that, like if your kid's like, I can't tell you because it's secret. Probably not. We're happy to help. You understand the process.
Good practice for them. Good practice for when it actually is secret.
You know, good on you, candidate. Secret, nothing's
just
a secret.
Start not explaining things right out the gate. It's good practice for your deployments.
Start conditioning people that you're gonna lie to them and gaslight them. Where are you going? I can't tell you, bro. You're going to Avon Park. You're gonna go call fucking Moacast. Come on, quit it. You can tell any. I can't tell you. We're doing super secret medical stuff. No, you're going to this place to do this medical training. You can tell people that. It's not a thing. It's annoying. Anyway,
Christmas break though.
Christmas
when
break.
They come home on Christmas break, we see a lot
Christmas
of
break is the worst. I hate when Exodus. I think we fixed it to where we graduate a team before Christmas break, and then another one doesn't start until afterwards. But the teams, getting teams back from Christmas break is the worst. And parents, I blame you. I blame you. They're not a barrel-chested freedom fighter. They're not They're not Jason Bourne. They're not allowed. Like if they go out and drink with their friends and sleep in until 11 o'clock, you should be like, you're going back to training, right? You know that they can just fail you out if you show up fat, because people show up fat.
You got home with a six-pack. If you go back looking like melted ice cream, there's gonna be questions.
And I'll tell you, that's the one time I wish I actually could call the parents and then like yell at them and be like, "What the man? We did all this work. I give them to you for 2 weeks, and here he is." I wouldn't really do that, but yeah, parents, this is the time to keep them focused, and that's kind of like, it's very intense on the front part, right? Like the assessment selection, pre-dive, typically dive, right? If you can get all the way through dive in the very beginning of this process, typically things start to like slow down. Like things are still hard. You're still being evaluated. They're still dangerous. Those worries are still there, but you'll notice a change in the candidate as well. You'll notice a change in how often they can call. They'll tell you about, this weekend we had time off. The team did a really good job. We didn't have any weekend restrictions. We all went out on this huge hike. Here's a picture of all of us at the top of this mountain. Like these are all of my best friends now, which is great.
Yep. That's
amazing. They're going to meet the best friends that they're ever going to make. They're going to meet people from walks of life they'd never met, a diversity of backgrounds and experiences and all these other things that we've been told that are necessary and good. They're going to do all of those things. and you get to be the parent that kind of like goes along with them and be like, oh man, these stories are cool, and you'll get to know their friends. And if you're lucky, man, I don't know how many Christmases, I'm the oldest of 6, oldest of 4 boys, but Christmas time at our house was like bring your friend home on Exodus. Like we'd be at my mom and dad's house in Northeast Ohio, and there'd be like 6 dudes in the house, and my mom would be like, who is that? And be like, oh, that's my brother's friend Chase. This is my friend Rocky. This is Kyle's friend Michael. We all went out to the bar last night and got hammered. Michael's actually in the backyard right now. But is everything cool? You'll get to meet those friends, and they'll tell you stories, and you'll get to know and understand them and have relationships with them too. It's awesome, right? But they still need you to be a parent. They still need you to be on top of the game, and hey, like you got to focus.
And don't be like when it's time to go back. It's not, oh, I wish you could stay longer. When do you get to come back? When do you blah, 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 blah. Chill it. You just need to relax. They'll be back when they're back. Be like, I'm looking forward to seeing you again when you can make it back. Like,
you ever been to San Antonio?
You made it through Exodus without getting arrested, right, so that you can go back to training.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like sending them off to basic training,
sure.
To a lesser degree. It's like, hey, go keep representing the way you have been. And we'll see you when we see you.
Right. So now let's hit the bad part. With the good comes the bad. So parents, how are you going to handle your candidate quitting? Because listen, the attrition rate is high. Quitting and failing, right? We're always looking at process improvements. We're always trying to find a way to get every single student graduate. The pipeline or assessment selection that we brought in, that's not the reality. People get injured, people quit, people do not make the standard. This person could be, and statistically will be, your candidate. So Trent, what is I know this could never be you because you've never failed at anything in your life ever. But if you failed, what would a candidate need to hear the most from their parent in that moment? Because that's probably going to be the first call, man. You're going to call your support system and you're like, hey, this is awkward. I got bad news. Didn't make it.
I mean, first you got to listen. You got to take in the situation from your candidate, former candidate, whatever it is.
Cones and glitters, baby.
It's just like when your kid loses their baseball or soccer game or whatever. Like, what went wrong? Did you try your best? Like, is there a way for you to go back, or did you learn any lessons? Like, focus on the experience and then move forward, because it's not the end all be all of life in the military. And I don't know how many times I said, I don't want people to quit. I don't want people to get injured and get washed out. But if you're a worker and if you're a doer and you made it that far into the process, like you have the capability to do a lot, whether it's with us or somewhere else. And parents, that's the perspective that you need to take. Like, hey, you're going to do good no matter what. And that's the expectation is still there that you're going to go out there and you're going to do some good. And you're going to, be a good follower. You're going to be a good leader. You're going to make a difference in this world. And whether or not you go back to Air Force Special Warfare or anything else, like, that's fine. But you still need to try. And also tell them not to tell cone stories with all the other people when they get there, and throw their t-shirts away. But
every t-shirt, every pair of blue or black shorts, whatever you're wearing now, those silkies are not outerwear. They're also not underwear. Grow up.
But it's an incredible privilege to have one of those before and after moments, whether you make it or you don't. And just being in the pipeline, if you're in the pipeline for like a couple months and something happens and you end up out of the pipeline, that's such a huge before and after moment in your life. And you can't tell me that you didn't learn a ton about yourself and a ton about the world and how things work and don't work. And so take that and move forward with it. But don't fall back into like feeling bad for yourself. Don't victim vet yourself while you're still in the military. That's silly.
Right. That's the worst. And, to put this in kind of more perspective, less than 1% of the Air Force has ever tried to make it into these career field. Okay. Less than 1% the entire time, less than 1% have even tried. And the amount of people that are successful out of that, like, it makes you less than 1/10 of 1% have ever served in the Air Force Special Operations career field. The fact that they showed up, I don't care if your candidate goes through the entire process, shows up on day one, gets the living dog shit smoked out of them and goes, you know what, this isn't for me, I quit. They've still done more than 99% of the folks in the Air Force. They tried. So you don't let them lose that, and the growing that they did in that process and after that process is going to be immense. You are going to learn things about yourself, about your teammates, about who you are as a person, about your support system. Those things that you're going to learn in that time, they're invaluable. I can tell you as a guy that failed out. I can tell you as a guy that quit. and had to come back after paying my 5-year penalty to the regular Air Force, I can tell you for sure in that moment, hearing, hey man, I'll tell you what, I started telling candidates as an instructor, it was my speech. Less than 1% try, less than 1% make it. I can't believe that you were even here for as long as you did. That is something that you should be proud of. Did it work out? No, you failed in this one. It's okay to say that, but take it for what it is. Don't be bitter about it. Learn, take those lessons and go forward. And I'll tell you what, if you're a good candidate and you want to come back, come back. Come on. If you think you do have what it takes, now that you know what this is, if you think you have what it takes, come on back. I'll be the first one in your corner. I'll be the first one to stamp the paperwork and say, yeah, absolutely, should return. But it's going to be a tough one, and you're going to need to focus them on what's next, especially in that quitting thing is, hey, what's next? You know, again, just like anything good, take your day, feel your feelings, take your sadness. But when we wake up tomorrow, we got stuff to do because now it's time to look for another job. Now it's time to look at a washback. Now it's time to look at what you're going to do next.
Dude, those conversations. I mean, I have some memories of being an instructor, right? Where at the Skylark gym, lots of quitters at the pool.
Lots of quitters at the pool.
And sometimes, and you get to a certain point in every course where you're just like, I don't think we're gonna have any more quitters. And inevitably,
it happens.
That one guy who's like your dark horse.
That's it.
They just found the end.
Yeah.
And of course, Sergeant Segmiller, they're like, hey man, the kid's in the locker room. You need to go chit chat with him real quick to make sure he doesn't, do anything stupid or anything else. But like,
you can see it too. You can see on the ones where you have a conversation and it turns them around, and then you can tell from 2 seconds into the conversation, be like, nope, you've already made your decision. Doesn't matter what I say.
I mean, it's hard. They're crying or doing whatever they're doing. And then, dude, when they start apologizing to me, like, Sergeant, I let you down. It's like, bro, like, I don't want to be in that pool doing what you were just doing. Like, that is awful.
That sounds tough.
What I just did to you was terrible. Don't apologize to me.
What I did to you was terrible.
But that is one of the things that we talk about is like, hey, my expectation for you is to move forward and to do some good. So like, if your cadre are saying that, and I think they're always saying that, all your experienced cadre are still going to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's echoed by the parents, then man, yeah, it's going to be tough, and they're gonna think about this for a long time. They're going to stare at a lot of ceiling fans, but as long as they move forward, they can still fill that gap and maybe come back.
Yeah, and just a quick, I'm going to pull the curtain back a little bit, guys, parents, candidates that are listening out there. So Sergeant Segmiller, right? He'd have to walk in there and he'd have to talk to you. Let me tell you the dread from me having these. When I was the director of training, I had to remove people from the course all the time. I liked some of the people that I had to remove from the course. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And the feedback that I would get after having these exit interviews was, man, you were so supportive. And the second that I quit, I thought that everybody was going to be disappointed in me. And when in the end, you guys were supportive of me and you wanted me to pass. And I wish I would have known that before I made my decision to quit. I just thought everybody hated me. Be like, that's how we turn stress up, guys. If Sergeant Segmiller and myself, if Aaron and Trent, respectively, can take a step back from a training event and go, God, I did not want that guy to quit. Fuck, man. All right, let me go talk to him. And then you talk to him and you have a man-to-man conversation. You're like, bro, what happened? I wanted you to pass. And he looks at you and goes, I thought you hated me. I thought you were here to make me quit. Take that all and crystallize it. Because when you're having those moments where you're like, everybody hates me and I suck and this isn't for me, we'll turn that stuff over on a dime. We'll come out of that training event and go, hold on, man. We were trying to get you stressed and you responded inappropriately. And crap, man, nobody wanted that.
Yeah.
Parents, maybe take that lesson and go, hey, it's just a training event. If you're able to do what you're supposed to, what the instructors ask of you at the training event's going to go fine. You're going to be great. I'm not saying it's a role. I'm not saying it's fake. I am saying delivering curriculum and inducing stress is something that you have to learn to be really good at. And the really good people can induce that stress and then peel it back and immediately go into a different conversation. Just a tip.
Well, we did a thing one time. One of the very seasoned instructors showed the students one time. We went to the pool and they were doing 10-ups and we were all going crazy and we were making noise and we're slapping pool noodles on the floor, and all the students are popping, right? And no one's completing the event. And you stop it and you get it quiet and you're like, hey, all right, we're going to do this again. And we're not going to say anything. All the students make it.
And my favorite one is like, hey, all we need to do is make 2. If we make these next 2, we're not gonna yell at you. Nobody's gonna shark you. We're not gonna touch you. We just need to make 2. And then magically, everybody was able to make 2.
Yeah, but the candidates are going to have to recognize, like, you can recognize what the stress-inducing tools are, and are being used, and find a way to compartmentalize that and just do your job, because that's what it's there for. And if you can recognize it and put a label on it, it might be a little bit easier for your candidate to put that in the box and just do what they need to do.
Yep. The pipeline stuff, for parents, you just need to be there. Like we said, it's going to take a lot of input at the beginning, and then it kind of tapers off to where you're able to, maintain normal contact. And there's going to be big moves, for the controllers and for the SR guys. There's going to be the move, out to North Carolina, across the states. You're going to get to go down to STTS. For the PJs, spend a lot of time in San Antonio, and then you're going to get to go down to New Mexico, to the home of pararescue at Kirtland Air Force Base. And you're going to get to do all those things. Your input at that point, especially for a candidate that's just cruising, which is the goal, right? Knocking things out as they come up, doing what they're supposed to, engage in the process. It really should be a pretty enjoyable experience until graduation. One piece of advice for parents: go to the graduation. Lean into it. Do whatever you can to get there. It'll be planned for months out. I can tell you right now, I guarantee that the Kirtland Schoolhouse has the pararescue graduations locked down through 2025. I can tell you the dates of the graduation next year. I will tell you, parents, if you do one thing, all the pipeline, it can be completely telephonic. You can leave them at basic training. You don't have to go to basic training graduation. You don't have to go to A&S graduation. You don't have to go to any other thing. When they put that beret on their head, when they blouse their boots for the first time, you got to be there. You got to be there. It's something that's so important.
Are we going to recommend that parents don't go to basic training graduation? Because I'm here for it. I think it sends the right message.
So for us, yes. And you know what? I'll be an honest broker here. If your student is going into the Air Force Special Warfare pipelines, I think it might actually be a little motivator to be like, I'm not going to basic training. I'm going to the graduation that matters when you put that beret on. That might be a motivating factor. Okay. If you're just going, like, of course, I wouldn't recommend parents to not go. Like, if your child's getting in to go Intel, and
just show up to basic training.
Show up to basic training. San Antonio's nice. They do a good job.
Like, he's super excited to make it through basic training.
Yeah, if you can go to both, I'll say go to both. But I think I can't wait to chop this up on a reel and have somebody tell me I'm a fucking clown for something that they didn't listen to when I said don't go to basic training, which will happen. What's up, Jay Bones? I think the important one there, like the basic training graduation for somebody going to the special warfare career field, I think the important one there is, if you had to pick between the two, like let's say money's tight and you can't fly all over the country to go follow your crazy candidate's dreams, you gotta get to the beret. You got to get to when they are fully qualified, out of their course, out of their pipeline, after all of those things are done, because they're your student. You'll never forget it. I remember every second of my graduation night, except for maybe the last hour. But that was
a little fuzzy
because of alcohol. Sorry, I was over 21. I don't know. Sorry, I had 2 kids. Shut up. I got drunk. I'll tell you what, they'll remember that forever. They'll remember the speeches. They'll remember their friends. They'll remember how they felt. They'll remember their talks with you. You're going to have a heart-to-heart. Your candidate is going to tell you at that time that they could have made it without you, and they're right. You got to get there. That's the one.
Yeah, and maybe your candidate didn't talk to you more than like 4 times the entire process. You were still there, and they knew it.
Yeah. Yep.
So show up to that graduation, and they'll let you know. It's a big day, and it's a pretty emotional event. It's a good time, and also we put on fun graduations.
Hell yeah, you do. Yeah, if you think my dad also wasn't hammered with me, you're wrong.
Yeah, they're a good time.
It was good. It was good. You should go to them. They're important. I think that's it. That's a lot of advice to parents, huh? At least for the pipeline.
Yeah, I feel like this is a far more useful episode than what we usually put out.
It is, yeah. Which is crazy because we're here and Peaches isn't. Usually he's the one that's like brings value. He's probably on the phone getting yelled at right now, which is tight.
He's probably poking someone in the belly button.
My phone doesn't ring at all. Something happened, like drama happens, and I'm just like, oh, you guys are getting phone calls, huh? It's weird. Nobody's calling me. Anyway, let me know how it goes.
Hey, but parents, at the end of the day, like, we're always here, right? And we love answering these questions, and we're not young anymore. We all have kids. And so, we know a bunch of instructors in the pipeline. We know how it goes. We've all been stressed to the max before and thought silly thoughts and come back to the other side of it. So hit us up with your questions, any suggestions that you all have, because we're not like the end all be all of good advice. And especially any of you parents that have had students go through the pipeline, if you want to pipe in with things that worked for you, that would be super fantastic.
And if anybody wants to come on, are you the parent of an active duty operator right now? You want to come on and talk about your experience? Hit us up. you're welcome to. We would love to have you on, hear your story, and hear how you handle all these challenges. But for now, thanks. Like, subscribe, comment, leave a little something for the algorithm. We'd really help it out. If you'd like to, consider becoming a member. We're putting on a lot more members only content that's never going to see the light of day as we move to get a bigger catalog of members only content. There's going to be stuff that doesn't go live, but that's why you're paying as a member. And then that gives you the ability as well. If you ask us a question, we're going to respond to it directly. You want us to do a whole podcast episode on something? Let us know. We'll put it out there.
Technically, at that point, we work for you, which
we do.
I thought we did this so we wouldn't have a boss. We jacked it all up.
Nope. Now I got a whole bunch of other bosses, hopefully thousands of bosses going into the future, because that would be super dope. Parents, you're doing great. From two parents, from two operators, former action guys, you're doing great. Keep going. I know it's tough. I know you're a human trying to figure it out, and you've got a kid that's trying to go into something that is very, very dangerous and very scary in an uncertain time. We got you. We're here for you. So welcome to the team. You're on it too. So thanks. Like, subscribe, smash that subscribe button. We'll see you next time. Follow us where we are. Check out onesready.com for your merch.